Have you ever felt that at certain moments in your life, something unseen is trying to keep you from peace and truth? Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to stay calm in the face of fear, doubt, or anxiety? What if I told you that there is a verse that has the power to change that, and that darkness is doing everything it can to make sure you never find out? What is it about these words that so disturbs those who would see you lost? Why is Satan so afraid that you will know this truth? The secret is closer than you think, and it's easier than it seems. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm about to share with you could be the missing key to transforming your life, bringing peace to your heart, and the strength to overcome any challenge. And once you know why this verse is so powerful, nothing will ever be the same again. Have you ever noticed how sometimes when you try to do something good, especially when you decide to get closer to the truth or seek a connection with the divine, obstacles appear on all sides? It's as if there are suddenly distractions, fatigue, thoughts that take you away from what really matters. This resistance is no accident. Something is trying to keep you from getting closer to that which can free your soul. And this happens to many, not because you are weak, but because there is a force that fears you discovering the truth that transforms. When I was on retreat, isolated in the desert, I realized something that changed everything for me. The silence of that place exposed thoughts that seemed to come from outside, trying to sow doubt, fear, and pride. That which opposes the truth is cunning. It whispers lies that appear to be truths, placing a burden on the conscience and making many believe that they are not worthy of approaching the Father. The enemy of souls, like a sneaky shadow, always tries to divert the human heart from the path of peace and fulfillment. And do you know what is the greatest threat to this power? Revelation. Truth spoken with conviction has the power to undo all the lies it seeks to propagate. There is one verse in particular that clearly exposes this, not because it's just written words, but because the truth it carries is a light that the darkness cannot stand. When you say these words in faith, it's like lighting a flame in the midst of darkness, and where there is light, the shadow cannot remain. What Satan fears most is not the strength of men nor the power of institutions, but the awakened conscience of a person who understands his identity and the unconditional love that the Creator offers. For a person who understands this cannot be easily manipulated by fear, guilt, or deception. Have you ever felt unworthy? Have you ever thought that your mistakes were too big to be forgiven? Because that's the lie that is trying to keep you trapped. The Father's love is not based on what you do or don't do. It's a constant source, like a river that never runs dry. And it is this truth that the enemy hates for you to know, because when you realize it, you stop hiding, you stop carrying burdens that you should never have taken on. And when you let go of those shackles, peace begins to come into places that were previously filled with fear. Once a man came to me, his heart heavy with guilt and sorrow. He believed that he was beyond forgiveness, that his mistakes were irreversible. But when he heard the truth, that love doesn't require perfection, but openness and surrender, tears streamed down his face. Not in sadness, but in relief. The lie that held him captive had been exposed, and in that moment he was free. The light of truth, when accepted, dissolves chains that have seemed unbreakable for years. It's curious how easily the human mind can be deceived by thoughts that seem to be its own, but are actually external influences. When you think, I can't do this, or this isn't for me, and stop and ask yourself, who benefits from that thought? The Father who wants your freedom, or the one who wants to see you paralyzed? The answer becomes obvious when you look at the consequences of these thoughts. What comes from God brings peace, even when it is in opposition. What comes from the enemy confuses and oppresses. And that's why this verse bothers the opposing forces so much, because it reminds you of your origin, your worth, and the truth that has always been there, but has often been obscured by the voices of fear and doubt. When you say it with sincerity, you're not just talking, you're affirming a reality that transcends the limited vision of this world. It's as if, in that moment, you are reclaiming what has always been yours, the direct connection to the source of all life. Many people look for answers in distant places, in things that promise quick relief but leave an even greater void. But the answer is closer than you think. You don't need complicated rituals or intermediaries to get to the Father. All it takes is a willing heart and words spoken with truth. This is what enrages the darkness, the simplicity of divine love. For while the enemy seeks to complicate and confuse, the truth is simple and direct. And maybe right now you're wondering, but why don't we hear more about it? The answer is subtle, but clear to those who will see. What is liberating is not always what the world highlights, for there are many distractions created to keep you from seeing what's really important. The battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the mind that tries to rise up against the truth that dwells within you. There is much more to be revealed about how these words can transform your reality and bring light into the darkest corners of your life. And this transformation begins with the awareness that by speaking the truth, you are not just declaring something to yourself, but aligning yourself with the essence of who you have always been called to be. And as this awareness begins to take hold, other layers of power and revelation become visible, showing that what seemed distant is actually within your reach. Have you ever stopped to consider how words have the power to build or destroy? A single sentence can lift someone who has fallen, or bring down a heart that was once calm. What comes out of the mouth before it is sound is seed, and every seed that is planted will eventually blossom. That's why there is so much power in the words you choose to hear, to repeat, and especially to believe. And that's exactly why the forces that oppose the light are doing everything they can to make sure you never discover this simple but transformative truth. When words carry truth, they don't just ring in your ears, they penetrate your heart and change the way you see the world. And that's when transformation begins. For the reality you experience today is largely the result of the thoughts you've nurtured and the words you've believed. How often have you found yourself saying things like, "This is impossible for me," or "I will never get out of this situation"? Do you realize how these words, even if they seem harmless, create an atmosphere around you that reflects exactly what was said? But there's a hidden secret, something the darkness hates for you to discover. Words of truth are like keys that open doors to realities that previously seemed unattainable. When you say something with faith that is in harmony with the Father's truth, you are not just speaking. You are activating a power that transcends the visible and touches what is eternal. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room. The light may be small, but the darkness can never resist it. I remember a time when a man, tired of fighting his own thoughts, came to me and said, "I've tried everything." I looked into his eyes and saw not only fatigue, but a firm belief in what was holding him back. I told him, "The change you're looking for starts with what you choose to believe and say." He asked, "But how can words change anything?" I replied with a smile. "Just as words spoken in anger can hurt, words spoken in faith can heal." The man decided to try it. He began to declare with conviction, "I am loved. I am guided. I can do this." Choice 2. And over time, what seemed like a simple verbal exercise transformed his reality. Not because the words were magic, but because he began to align himself with the truth that already existed about him. The enemy knows this. That's why he tries to flood the mind with words of discouragement, fear, and doubt. He can't stop the truth from existing, but he does everything he can to stop you from believing it. For the moment you understand that your words have the power to shape your experience, he loses his hold. So be careful what you repeat to yourself. Words are like seeds. You reap what you sow. If you sow words of fear, you will reap insecurity. If you sow words of confidence, you will experience peace and courage. And it's not just what you say to others, it's what you say to yourself. How many times have you criticized yourself in a cruel way? How many times have you failed to forgive yourself for something that is in the past? Now imagine that instead of those harsh words, you started saying, "I am more than my mistakes. I am a child of love. I can start again." Sound too easy? The truth is usually like that, clear and accessible, and that's why so many people ignore it. There's a verse that Satan hates because it exposes this reality so clearly. "Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those who love to use it will eat its fruit." Proverbs 18:21. See? What you say has weight. It has consequences. Words can be like healing waters or like poison that destroys. So choose to speak life into your story, into your family, into your dreams. Even when the reality around you seems to say otherwise, keep the truth on your lips. For when the time is right, the harvest will come. I've seen men and women trapped in cycles of pain change their lives simply by changing their words, not because they ignored reality, but because they chose to speak a truth that was greater than their circumstances. And that's what I want you to understand. You are not stuck in your life today. There is a path to transformation, and it begins with what you believe and what you say. Sometimes the enemy whispers, "Why try? Nothing will change." And that's when you have to stand up and answer with conviction. I am not what circumstances say I am. I am what the Father says I am. Because when you do that, you're not just talking, you're choosing which reality you want to live in. And that choice, as simple as it may seem, has the power to change everything around you. You may ask yourself, but what if doubt persists? When even when you say words of faith, nothing seems to happen. This brings us to an essential point, something that many people ignore, but which could be the key to overcoming even the most challenging moments. How many times have you believed something that you later discovered was a lie? And what did it feel like to realize that you had been deceived? Truth has a quiet but irresistible power. When it emerges, the lie crumbles just as darkness disappears in the face of light. No matter how long falsehood has reigned, it only takes a moment of clarity for everything to change. This is what the enemy fears, that you will see what he is trying so hard to hide. The strategy of evil has always been to sow doubt and distort what is true. In the wilderness, when I faced temptation, I heard words that seemed right, but were full of deception. The adversary knows how to use partial truths to confuse, how to twist what is pure to manipulate those who are not paying attention. He is subtle. He doesn't come and say he wants to destroy your peace. Instead, he plants thoughts such as, "You're not enough. This will never work." Or, "If God loved you, you wouldn't be going through this." Can you see the cunning? Words that touch deep feelings and try to pull you away from the source of love and security. But when the truth is revealed, the veil falls. And that's why he's so afraid of you knowing your true identity. Because when you discover who you really are, a being loved, protected, and guided by the Father, the lies lose their power. The enemy has no power against the truth. He only thrives on ignorance and fear. It's like a shadow that looks scary until the light comes. When it does, you realize that the monster was just a void with no real substance. Once a woman came to me who had been carrying a burden of guilt for years, believing that she didn't deserve forgiveness. She had heard so many times that she was damned that she began to believe it. Her eyes were full of despair, but her words revealed the lie that held her captive. I know God can forgive others, but I've gone too far. I looked at her with compassion and said, "Who told you that? The Father is not distant from you, it's the lies that make it seem distant. The truth is that His love has never ceased to surround you." When I heard this, the tears that fell were no longer of sadness, but of relief. The lie that held her captive had been exposed, and she could no longer resist. That's how it works. As long as you believe words that diminish you or keep you from hope, you remain in a cycle of fear. But all it takes is a breath of truth for everything to change. That's why it's important to ask yourself, where do the thoughts I've accepted come from? Are they bringing me closer to peace, or are they sinking me into guilt and fear? What is true frees. What imprisons and oppresses does not come from the Father. The adversary knows that if you discover that you are loved unconditionally, he will lose his hold over you. He uses circumstances to reinforce lies, saying that pain is a sign of abandonment, that difficulties are punishment. But true love doesn't abandon you, and life isn't measured only by the easy moments. There is meaning even in the headwinds. The difference is that when you know the truth, even storms become opportunities to grow and trust more. The verse he so fears clearly states this reality. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. John 8:32. It's not just about hearing nice words, it's about letting that truth penetrate your heart. When that happens, you realize that many of the burdens you have carried are based on lies you have accepted along the way. How many opportunities have you missed because you believed you couldn't do it? How many times have you given up before trying because you were afraid of failure? These are all traps built with misleading words. The truth doesn't just set you free, it transforms you. It changes the way you see yourself, the way you relate to others, and the way you face life's challenges. Above all, it reconnects you with the essence of love that has always been available. The enemy will try until the last moment to convince you otherwise, but his strength lies only in his ability to deceive. And once the light of truth shines, no lie can stand. Perhaps you're thinking, but what if everything around me says the opposite? The answer to this question is not to ignore reality, but to learn to use a tool that many underestimate. Something simple, but capable of calming the most raging storm. How many nights have you spent lying down with your head full of thoughts that wouldn't let you rest? Those moments when your heart races, your breathing gets heavy, and worries seem to scream in your head. Anxiety is like a shadow that insists on creeping up behind you, always whispering, "What if something goes wrong? What if you don't make it? What if it never gets better?" And fear, that old acquaintance, often goes hand in hand with doubt, raising questions that weaken the soul. But what if I told you that there is a simple truth that can silence those voices? The enemy loves to use these feelings to keep people from peace. He knows that when the heart is troubled, it is harder to hear the gentle voice of the Father. In this whirlwind of thoughts, many rash decisions are made, thoughtless words are spoken, and relationships are broken. Fear paralyzes, doubt corrodes. Anxiety sucks the joy out of the present, leaving you always worrying about what might happen. And life. Our life is swallowed up by these feelings that steal the sparkle from the days, but there is a way to peace, and it's not in running away from difficulty or trying to control the uncontrollable. True peace comes from trust, the quiet, assurance that even when things seem out of order, there is a greater care guiding each step. And it is this confidence that the enemy tries to undermine with lies and worry. He knows that a confident heart is an unshakable heart. When I was surrounded by accusing looks, threats, and dangers, I heard the same voices trying to make me doubt the protection and purpose that guided me. It was easy to give in to fear. It was tempting to doubt. But there was something that kept my heart firm, the certainty that the Father never forsakes those who trust in Him. And it was this truth that sustained me when circumstances said otherwise. You may be facing a stormy sea of problems right now. Maybe it's bills piling up, frayed relationships, or an illness that has robbed you of your peace. And the question that keeps coming up is, how do I get out of this? How do I stay calm when everything seems to be falling apart? The answer lies in this verse. Cast all your cares on Him, for He cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7. Stop for a moment and quietly repeat these words. He cares for you. This is not a wish or a distant possibility. It is a reality. While you worry about tomorrow, He is already there preparing the way. While you are beating yourself up for yesterday, He is reaching out to lift you up today. The invitation is simple. Cast your anxiety on Him. Don't carry alone what was never yours to carry. Imagine someone walking with a backpack full of rocks. Every worry, every fear, every doubt is another weight inside. Now imagine the lightness of leaving that backpack on the ground and walking without it. That's what happens when you choose to trust. And it's not about ignoring problems. It's about understanding that there is a greater care that can do what you cannot. I've seen men hardened by pride succeed. I've seen men hardened by pride broken when they realize they don't have to face everything alone. I've seen women tired of fighting with their strength find peace by simply saying, "It's not the strength of a shout that moves mountains, but the quiet faith that stands firm in the truth, and that truth is clear." You are not alone. Maybe you're saying, "But it's hard to trust when everything seems to be going wrong." I understand. I'm not here to minimize your pain or pretend that problems will magically go away, but I am here to remind you that relief is possible, and it begins when you decide to let go of what is strangling you. Give it up. Take a deep breath and surrender. Say it out loud if you need to. I don't know how to solve this, but I know I'm not alone in this. These words can be the beginning. of your liberation. And when the fear knocks on the door again because it may try to come back, remember that you have a choice. You can let those thoughts creep in and take over, or you can respond with the truth. Even when the winds are blowing hard, this conviction keeps your feet steady. Interestingly, it is in the most challenging moments that faith is strengthened. Because it's easy to trust when things are going well. The real exercise happens when, even when you can't see a way out, you choose to rest in that promise. And in doing so, you begin to notice signs of that care in small details. A word that comes at the right time, an unexpected solution. A peace that enters your heart without logical explanation, and it is this peace that confounds the darkness. Because the enemy expects to see you crumble, but find someone who remains calm even in the midst of the storm. Not because they have all the answers, but because they know who they can trust. And that trust not only sustains you, it transforms the way you face every challenge. But maybe you're still asking yourself, all right, I want to trust it, but how do I keep that faith alive when fear insists on returning? There is a simple, often underestimated practice that can nurture that trust and keep your heart at peace, even in the most intense battles. Have you ever wished you had something to protect you from pain, insecurity, or the thoughts that insist on bringing you down? Imagine being able to carry an invisible shield that protects you from negative words, difficult circumstances, and the doubts that try to invade your mind. What if I told you that this shield is real, and it's closer than you think? Throughout life, many people try to protect themselves in different ways. Some arm themselves with pride, others build walls of indifference to keep from getting hurt again. But these human defenses, as effective as they may seem at first, eventually become a burden. They may keep the pain at bay for a while, but they also block the love, hope, and peace that we so desperately seek. The true shield, the one that protects without hardening the heart, is found in words of truth and faith. There is a verse that, when understood and practiced, works just like this, as a barrier against that which seeks to bring you down. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, Psalm 23:1. Think about these words for a moment. They are not just pretty phrases for moments of consolation. They carry a declaration of protection and provision that the enemy hates to hear. For when you declare with conviction that you lack nothing, you are saying that there is no room for fear of lack, doubt of abandonment, or anxiety about the future. How often does the adversary try to sow thoughts like, "You are alone in this. Nobody cares. What if something isn't there tomorrow?" But when you say that the Lord is my shepherd, you are saying the opposite. You are saying that there is someone who guides your steps, cares for your needs, and supports you in difficult times. This truth is unbearable to the darkness, because when you believe it, the lies lose their power. I remember a man who lived in fear of losing everything. His greatest fear was the uncertainty of tomorrow. As we talked, he said, "What if I can't support my family?" I looked at him with compassion and replied, "What if, instead of focusing on what could go wrong, you began to declare that you have a shepherd who takes care of everything? How about every time you feel anxiety, you say out loud, 'I shall not want'?" He accepted the challenge, and day after day he repeated those words. Over time, not only did the circumstances around him begin to change, but more importantly, the way he responded to them. Fear gave way to confidence, and anxiety was replaced by a peace he had never experienced before. This verse is not an empty promise. It is a reality available to those who choose to trust. But for it to work as a shield, it's not enough to read it automatically. You have to believe it. It's like holding an umbrella in the rain. If you just carry it around without opening it, you'll keep getting wet. So it is with the words of truth. They only serve their purpose when they are used with faith. And the beauty of this protection is that it is not limited to external situations. It's not just about having food or a place to live. It's about having peace in the midst of chaos, clarity in the midst of confusion, and hope when everything seems to be falling apart. How many times have you faced situations where, humanly speaking, there was no solution, and yet something happened? A door opened, an unexpected answer appeared, relief came. It's not coincidence. It's caring. It's provision. The enemy will try to make you forget this. especially in the most difficult moments. He will try to convince you that it's all in your hands, to burden you with responsibilities that are not yours. But when these thoughts come, take a deep breath and declare, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Say it as often as you need to, not because the words themselves are magic, but because they connect you to the truth that already exists. And little by little, you'll notice something extraordinary. Anxiety loses ground, fear recedes, and doubt is silenced. For when trust is greater than worry, peace becomes your constant companion. No matter what anyone says, what happens, or what tomorrow brings, the shield is strong, and it doesn't fail. As you listen to this, a part of you may wonder, but does it really work? What if I can't have all that faith? The good news is that it's not about having a lot of faith. Sometimes all it takes is a simple decision to believe a little more each day, even if it's just a whisper in the midst of pain. I want for nothing, that's enough to get you started. And in time, you'll see that this truth, when embraced, not only protects you, but transforms the way you live. Because living with the certainty of constant care changes everything. What was once a cause for despair becomes an opportunity for trust. What was once fear is now courage. And it is there in that place of trust and surrender that true transformation takes place. Not just around you, but within you. And this shift is only the beginning of something even greater to come. Now, it's up to you. The truth has been laid before you. You are not alone, you never have been, and you never will be. No matter how dark the night seems or how hard the battle, there is a greater power watching over every detail of your life. The enemy may try to whisper lies, but the truth shouts louder. You are loved, guided, and sustained. No words to the contrary have power when you stand firm in this certainty. Don't put off the decision to believe any longer. Stop carrying burdens that don't belong to you. Surrender, trust, and watch the impossible bow to faith. You were born to win, to be light, to experience the peace that cannot be explained but can be felt. Don't let circumstances define who you are. Your worth is defined by the love that created you and that never fails. And now as you breathe these words, receive my blessing. May your path be illuminated, and may you discover the peace that dwells within you. May love walk with you, sustaining your every step, strengthening your heart and clearing your vision. And even on challenging days, may you remember, the Father's care never leaves you. Go in peace and live this truth.